I'm here, I think, to talk in half an hour about Fjord in general and CMT in particular. Is that what everyone is expecting?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's move on a slide. And many of you, forgive me if you've heard all of this before. So I was asked to basically make clear the AI offering structure, and these slides I hope are self-explanatory. They're not actually slides I present very often, so I'm not familiar with presenting them. But we sit within the strategy and experience part of AI, which of course sits within digital. If we move on to the next slide. And that part is run by Nan out of the US, and we fit within Beju's strategy and experience group as part of the offering. So that's a sort of rapid overview of where we sit within the organization. I think what I will say at this stage, and it's useful for everyone to understand, I think it is a year and a week since the deal was completed, and we've remained happy and enthusiastic, and even more enthusiastic throughout that year, and are very happy about where we've landed. Most of the first year has been really about nailing down revenues and connecting, I think, frequently through AI or direct with OGs in order to make sure that the promise of revenue flow and pull-through, which is the terminology used to mean the amount of extra revenue that Fjord is able to help generate for Accenture. We've spent the last year really nailing that. That's now flowing well in every single office. I think we're incredibly pleased with the clients that we've been engaged with winning over the last year, which, I mean, the list is, let me just find it now. I think what we will spend a lot of the next 2 years doing, because this integration is undoubtedly a 3-year process, is we will begin to work harder now on integrating our offer within the general go-to-market offer for Accenture Digital. And we've not spent a lot of time concentrating on that over the last year, and that has been a deliberate act, because really we've been focused on just nailing the revenues and the basics. I think now we're moving to a stage where we're more comfortable to begin to really understand how what we do fits with other bits of Accenture overall. So if you have questions on that, you may not find I'm able to give you very good answers yet. I would hope that in a year's time the answers will be better. Hopefully that's reasonably clear. Can we move on a page? So what we do is service design. Service design is really a response to the complexity we've seen in the market over the last 6 to 7 years. I've been doing design now in digital since 1993, and the pace of change is now faster than we've ever seen, and it's not going to get slower anytime soon. In fact, it's only going to accelerate. If you look back, say, 8 years ago, most designers, and certainly almost all companies globally, when they thought about digital design, they were thinking about a screen the size you're probably looking at the moment, and a keyboard and mouse as a primary interaction mechanism. Now, every company worth its salt is having to engage on at least 3, maybe 4 platforms. So that's PC, laptop-based, it's smartphone, it's tablet. They may be looking at smart TV. The more adventurous ones may well be looking at wearables or other connected devices or connected car. The list is endless, and it's not only those platforms which are multiplying, it's also the interaction paradigms. So we're not just thinking about keyboard and mouse, we're thinking about touch, swipe, we're thinking about gesture, we're talking and acting on voice design in a number of instances. So the interaction paradigms have also, so if you think about all of that, the multiplication of both interaction paradigms and platforms that we are designing for, you're really looking at a world of significant complexity. And the old UX approach, which was really developed to develop sophisticated websites, just is not standing the test of time. What clients are asking for and what they need is a service-driven mentality where you're looking at the entirety of the service and how it is experienced by customers or by employees or by other businesses. And that is what Fjord is here to think through and then design. Should we move on to the next page? So we typically represent people in the process, and we typically act as a balance between overly business and technology, or business needs and technology focus. We are the ones who are there to try and root this in human needs, and there's a whole number of different ways in which we do that. Sometimes it's by research, sometimes it's by creative intuition, sometimes it's by benchmarking against what other people are doing, sometimes it's by understanding, most usually it's about understanding the users at a deep level, and I'll show you one of the ways in which we go about that in a moment. This example here is a wonderful one where Harvard Medical School asked us to examine the way in which pediatric growth charts work, and for them we created an open source pediatric growth chart now in use by doctors around the world, which reinvented the way in which doctors show parents how their young child is developing. I should have changed this slide to show what it looked like previously, because it was impossible to understand, and any of you are parents, you will have seen these and you will know how difficult it is to understand what the pediatrician is trying to tell you, particularly at a moment when you may be anxious about your child. So Fjord completely redesigned this, and this is now in use the world over. And we did it by really looking at both the needs of the doctor, but also the needs of the parents sitting in the room, and actually going into hospitals and doctors' surgeries and looking at the process, and then diving deep on the data and trying to understand what it meant and how it should be presented. So that's a good, if you like, micro example of what we do. Let's move on a slide. In a nutshell, the reason why we believed and still believe, even more so in the combination of Fjord and Accenture, is because the complexity of the customer lifecycle means that we're going to have to begin to design for individuals, but to do so at scale. And that is the big challenge in our view for the next 10 to 20 years. We're really talking very long term here. To create that complete user engagement, which is where loyalty and revenues will come from, and profit, then we're going to have to work very closely with things like data, with analytics and social media, in order to deliver millions of individualized human experiences. And that is a job which I think design companies on their own will struggle with. It is a job from a design perspective which I think systems integrators will struggle with. It is why, we're passionate advocates for Accenture and Fjord being one team, because we believe this is where the future is going to go and what we need to deliver. Can we have the next slide, please? Again, apologies for those of you who are bored with seeing IM Pei's pyramid on our decks. Basically, the next 2 pages are saying the same thing. There are 2 bits to the customer experience, the bit everyone can see, and then let's move on to the next page, and the bit underneath which you don't necessarily see, but which powers everything. And the meaning of this is that the stuff below ground level is actually the stuff which influences powerfully whether a design will work or not. Service design, and Fjord have really championed this, if we can go on to the next slide, is all about looking at those 3 levels. The customer system, the business system, which is, how actually is this going to make money? How are we going to plug into call centers? How are we going to do customer care? Are there the logistics to back up this wacky idea we've just had, rather than something which we're going to have to create from the ground up? If we are going to have to create it from the ground up, what's the business rationale for doing that? And these are typically questions which design companies have not in the past been expected to ask. We expect ourselves to ask those questions. And then the technical system, actually can this be delivered, is what we're talking about, something which is, and we see this every single day in the conversations we have with clients. I can think of 2 financial services clients in the same market, one of whom is deeply hamstrung by their inability to flex their technology platform to do the things which their competitor is doing, which we are also designing for them. And the differences between the 2 is, to a large extent, not the quality of our design, but the ability of the technology platform to flex that one client doesn't have. We'll move on to the next slide. So let's look a bit at how we work. So we have to be honest, any of you who've been around design a bit will recognize the design process. So there isn't actually that much revolutionist. What does happen is that different projects have different needs. The strategic end of the work, which is over to the left-hand side, is something we are doing more and more and more of. Some of the work on the right-hand side is beginning to happen elsewhere. But on our bigger projects, we generally do all of these. It would be a mistake to give you the idea that development, for example, should be something which only takes place with a different set of designers and over at the client HQ or with Accenture people who aren't engaged with the designers. The best kind of development definitely has to engage service designers, or else you run the risk, and this does still happen frequently, that the great design work that has been developed and signed off gets bastardized, and that's not too unkind a word, in the process. So we're pretty passionate about remaining involved if we can be, and if there is client budget for us to be. And the best projects do go through all 5 of these phases. These phases, of course, also feed back on themselves as well. And, once you get to release, in my view, sophisticated clients are now accepting the fact that there are very few things which are launched which are perfect. They're beginning to understand the, always in beta mentality that startups have. And I think sophisticated design is about being there with the client as they go live, and being there with them as the analytics kicks in to understand which of the bits that we've developed work and which bits don't work, and then what are we going to do about that, and what signals is that sending back to us which will affect the service design. Should we move on? So there is a real rationale for putting this slide in the deck, and that is that there is a difference there is really quite a big difference in methodology between the way Fjord and many design companies work and the way in which Accenture quite often goes about things. And I think over the last year we've discovered that by and large this has been very powerful. I think our colleagues at Accenture have been really appreciating it, especially the 2-day workshops we run called Rumbles, where we have consistently, I think, had fantastic results from clients and with our Accenture colleagues. It can at times be uncomfortable. We do definitely have a more collaborative style, which can expose clients and put them in a place where they have to try and be creative, and they're not always comfortable with that. But when we work in conjunction with clients, rather than working at a distance from them, receiving a brief and then responding to the brief with a set of deliverables, generally speaking, the work doesn't shine. It's when we really engage closely with the client that the work does shine, and that goes on throughout the project. And I have numerous examples I can talk about where that's been the case. I think one of the things that we've learned over the last year is on bigger projects in particular, there can be a tendency for there to be misalignment about expectations between Fjord and some of the account teams within Accenture. We take it very seriously that it is our responsibility to try and bridge those expectation gaps. And I'm working very hard at the moment to build some new processes into what Fjord does so that those don't open up. Again, I don't want to make a big fuss about it. It's probably happened on about 10 to 15% of projects, but that's just slightly too many to be comfortable with, and we want to make sure that we adapt our engagement management so that expectations are better handled, because in some cases I think we've probably got a little bit of a road to travel to make sure we do this better. Is that reasonably clear? Actually, you probably can't talk back to me right now, so I hope that's clear, and I'm happy to take questions on that in a moment. Again, not a huge issue, but about adjusting our style so that we don't lose our culture, we don't lose our creativity, but we do engage in a better way. If we move on a slide. So I thought I'd spend a little bit of time just showing you some examples of work in progress. I'll come on at the end to show some brief case studies. This is stuff we've just been doing for give customers a detailed and rich understanding. It's a tool for developing a detailed and rich understanding, which you actually develop with customers. We use these sometimes in rumbles in order to begin to drive out ideas for what a service should look like. And I'm showing it really to show, because I think later on when I show some examples of our work, it's a little bit too easy to make the work just all look very nice, and that then leads to an assumption that the work is simple and straightforward. There is a great deal of detail that underpins what we do, so we're not just about creating pretty pictures, and I wanted to show this as one of the standard tools we use, so that you've got a sense of some of the detail that we go into. Next, please. So some of the lead case studies we use globally, the first one is 3 or Tray, because we did this for 3 Sweden. There is a lot more detail available on this, and I would imagine that quite a few of you are pretty aware of it because we have made it quite notorious. The relationship with 3 continues. We're doing way more work for them now. I know they're very happy with it. And basically what happened here was the client said to us, we want you to reimagine the phone bill. So we reimagined the phone bill as an app. And as we built it, we realized that the app could contain many, many other things apart from just data-driven visualization of the bill. So there's customer service on here. There's deep analysis of your phone book and what you've been doing with it. It shows patterns of your usage over the last month or more, by day part, for example. It's an incredibly feature-rich application, and the customers love it. It hovers between 4.5, 5 stars on the App Store. 50% of 3's subscriber base in Sweden are using this app, and that is spread evenly between their enterprise customers and their private customers too. 70% of those customers log in on a monthly basis, and 53% said that they are now using the app before or instead of contacting customer care. So the big story behind this is, if you start from the right place, which is how can we improve the user experience, you may well end up generating unexpected cost savings, which help the organization in another way. If you start, I think, from the point of view of how do we save costs by making customers look after themselves, you'd probably end up in a different place, which may well actually not achieve the objective you set out to, because you're putting more pain back on the customer. Next slide, please. Next slide's taking time to flow through. Here it is. Okay, so we recently launched, or excuse me, I should say Adidas launched a new watch called the Smart Run watch. It's a fully fledged wearable. It's not the only wearable product that we're doing worldwide, but it's probably the best known, and obviously it's a fantastic brand name. And we designed the interfaces and the service that flows through the watch. I should add that it is a runner's watch. It's not really a general purpose watch. It's very much targeted at amateur and professional athletes. It has GPS, heart rate sensor. It communicates with the user in a variety of ways using vibrations, glanceable, what we call glanceable design, which is the ability to just look at your wearable and absorb information from it rapidly. Color plays a crucial role in that, especially where heart rate is concerned when you're running. And also it has audio because it flows coaching instructions voiced by well-known athletes through your headset. And it's, again, been a huge success for us. Next slide, please. So we've been very strong in FS since 2009. We've done a number of award-winning projects. Twice the work we've done has had Forrester and Gartner reports written on. This quote came from a report on the Citibank iPad app, which was really a groundbreaking iPad app we did in the US. And Forrester said this app is single-handedly transforming the digital banking experience in the US. Strong emphasis on data visualization, a little bit of poking around with the client. I'm really compressing the case study here. A little bit of poking around with the client. We discovered they had a whole load of data they hadn't thought about using, and we could reflect back to the customers aggregate data on how they were spending their money in comparison with other people. And unsurprisingly, turned out to be information the customer wanted to know. Next slide, please. So we've done pretty much all of PayPal's designs on their leading products, specifically PayPal Here, which is a location-based, and we completely redesigned PayPal Wallet. And this year there'll probably be about $30 billion worth of revenues flowing through the interfaces and services that we help design. Next slide, please. So again, coming back to CMT, we've done a lot of work for Ericsson and Nokia Siemens networks, and the work tends not to emerge much in our hero case studies because it's got a lot to do with providing industrial grade design for customer experience management. We've done a lot of that with Nokia Siemens and with Ericsson as well. And it doesn't always make for the most scintillating of case studies unless you're particularly interested in the area. And in those cases, we have clients who are very loyal and we've done a heap of work with them. What makes this one stand out is it's just so easy to tell, which is what you're looking at on the bottom left-hand side of the screen is the customer care center at Bharti Airtel, where they are watching 250 million subscribers in real time on a massive data visualization, which is the size of 2 tennis courts put end to end. It is the biggest data visualization in the world, and it's to drive, customer experience management at a network level for one of the world's leading carriers. We move on. And then another one which we unfortunately cannot shout about nearly as much as we'd like to, but we were the design company behind the Firefox OS. We did this through Telefonica, with whom we've had a long and happy relationship. Next one, please. So I'm just going to finish off with some, again, I'll rattle through these pretty quickly, some deep CMT experience. So I probably should retire this as a case study, but emotionally it's difficult for us to do so because it has been iconic for us. At a stage in the mid-2000s when the BBC were really way ahead of the digital game, and I think now they're maybe a little less way ahead than they were, and we're innovating like mad. We were closely engaged with them and we helped them invent the BBC iPlayer, and then we took the BBC iPlayer mobile as well. So we did the first market-leading designs for it. Move on to the next slide. We've continued to work for the BBC, and the most recent work we've done for them, which I'm super proud of, is designing a data system. So in essence, this is a program of activity which allows journalists and designers across the world in the BBC to very rapidly create, from a series of templates and guidelines, data design to enhance their stories. Everyone who's been watching, everyone in media knows that the media are using much more of these kinds of tools digitally and on television as well, for that matter. And our job was to create a coherent set of patterns, something we do quite a lot of, by the way, for different organizations across the BBC, and this work is going live at the moment. So, one we're very proud of. Next slide, please. For Bonnier, we did newspaper tablet design. It's good work, but it's particularly remarkable for the output. Bonnier is, for those of you who don't know, is a major Swedish media company. This app has 50% market penetration on tablets in Sweden, which is an extraordinarily high level. And even better than that, 15% of the people who've downloaded it are subscribers. So a very high conversion to payment ratio. Next slide, please. So this is work we've done for Globo in Brazil. Globo, you may or may not be aware, actually the second largest TV network, I think, in the world. Hello? Have we just lost it? Come back, Lobo. And the work we've done for them was to really completely redesign their approach to the mobile web. You've got to remember that in this particular market, smartphone penetration is lagging behind, for example, Europe and North America. There's a lot of feature phones as well. So we were designing actually for a very large and wide range of devices. But the design has been so successful that within weeks of going live, the work we did is now the third most visited mobile website in Brazil, behind only Facebook and Google. This gets an average of 10 million uniques a month with 245 million page views a month. And that is a third of Brazilians who have access to the mobile web. So I suppose really the story here, again, like PayPal, is, we're dealing with very big numbers of users here, and our design is proving its way in there. Next one, please. So we've done a lot of work for Telefonica over the years. We've done, I guess, what would now be called quad play work for them, looking at all sorts of stuff, designing for example, for how DSL services will work. If we go on to the next slide, please. And actually, I've skipped off Telefonica too early, let me remember. And then other things we've done with Telefonica, for example, have been to design user experience transformation guidelines for them. And we've been deeply engaged with the project to try and transform the way the entire organization looks at design and experience design. And that was a major piece of work which lasted 2 years, up until about a year ago. We've probably got about 5 or 6 Telefonica case studies if anyone's particularly interested in the detail. But I didn't want to dwell on just one client. So Expressen, again, this is about taking a media onto mobile. And again, we've had some wonderful results with this. This is actually a very recent piece of design work. I think a couple of things on this. Within 4 months of launch, this had gone from 800,000 weekly users to 1.6 million. So our designs basically doubled the number of users in 4 months. It's not, amusingly, probably the prettiest piece of design you're ever going to see. And there was a wonderful quote which has become semi-legendary and fueled from the client, which was, "We like ugly, beautiful design. We want it black, tight, and bombastic." And there was a stage halfway through the project, we went back to the client, and he actually said to our team, "Could you make it just a little bit uglier, please?" Which we did. We're designers, but we're also client responsive. Next slide, please. So I mentioned a moment ago, we've done UX transformation for Telefonica. There's a little bit more detail here about almost exactly the same kind of work that we've done for Turkcell. We move on to the next slide. Again, this is about providing patterns across an organization. For Ericsson, and I put this in, the work is a little long in the tooth now. We did this back in 2010. I actually think that if you look at this and imagine this as a TV remote control, it stood the test of time extremely well. And we don't still see anything out on the market which has really cracked TV guides in as imaginative way as this. I believe that there is still a huge market opportunity there to really completely rethink the way in which TV guides work. And this was, I think, groundbreaking work which we could still be looking at and using elsewhere. We'll move on. For TeliaSonera. So TeliaSonera, as you may know, own an enormous number of different brands and operators across a vast variety of countries. And they came to us and said, we need to understand how to go about digital branding. We recognize that branding is no longer about physical space or posters or print. We want to understand how digital branding works, and we then want to create templates to drive that digital branding across every single one of our carriers, and that's exactly what we did for them. Can we move on? Nokia is I think sadly not maybe once the powerful case study it once was for us. They were our first really major client, and we have a great deal of loyalty to Nokia because we really built the company in the early years off the back of a great deal of work for them. I think more recently the two things I would point out that we've done for Nokia, which still carry a great deal of weight, is their website, the Nokia.com, where we completely redesigned it to be responsive, and I still think it's a world-leading example of responsive design. And then also Nokia Here, the mapping division, where we have really been in the lead agency now for about 4 years and have been extremely instrumental in driving how Nokia Maps has developed. And many of you will be aware that Nokia Here is regarded as really one of the crown jewels and was even pre the sale to Microsoft. And it was one of the bits that Nokia insisted on keeping because they see a glittering future for it. If you're not aware, Nokia Here have developed more relationships with car manufacturers than Google and Apple put together, and is widely regarded as a market leader there. Next slide, please. So we developed the Yota phone and the design for that, which is a phone where one side is e-ink, and that won an innovation award at Cannes last year. Next slide, please. And the work we did for NFL, where we developed the design for their iPad and smartphone companion app, which was so good that Apple made it their iPad app of the week when it came out.